Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Legacies. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Hope's side of things. I love that she rolls up at that school to see Vardamus. Obviously, he's unaware. He's been out of the loop with everything that's kind of happened to her. I guess they haven't really had an opportunity to inform everyone outside of the Salvatore school of like, yeah, cool, kind of stay away from Hope because she's kind of dangerous right now. She's not in her right mind, you know, not only being a tri-bit, but a tribrid without her humanity on. So she ends up basically taking like a sarcophagus to Vardamus to be like, yo, I need you to examine this for me, and lo and behold, who's inside of it? Oh, Lizzie. Yeah, I kind of put her in her sleep spell, so because it's like, yeah, I don't want to have to deal with her because she's also going to be like, because she is an absorption magic vampire, like, you know, she's going to be a heretic, so I'm like, I can't be dealing with that, so got to figure that all out. The coffins related to gods, which we're moving into that territory of this continuity. Because the closest we gotten to that was Home Dude, the psychic in Cade in the Vampire Diaries, because he was basically, he considers himself the devil, but there wasn't really a real, it was never really real hell. It was more like a psychic hell that he created. He played the role of the devil, but he wasn't really the devil. He was just a psychic who created his own version of it. So I guess like that's the closest thing we kind of really, I guess that, the Hollow didn't dabble in the god area, I don't think. I think Cade might be the closest thing we've had, I guess. But yeah, we're like slipping into god territory, which is like, well, literally every other magical creature or mystical creature that was supposed to be legend, turns out it existed. It was just eaten by Malivore and completely forgotten by humanity, so makes sense gods would exist too. Which makes you wonder, like, did Malivore in all its years of being around never cross paths with a god? I feel like that probably would have been something that got summoned at some point in time. Well, because, Triad... never mind. I'm curious in the long run. I'm like, I don't think, not unless they did come from Malivore at some point. So, like, I'm just thinking, like, in all this time, like, he never ate a god? It's been a while since the last episode, so I'm like, not unless some of that, I'm forgetting even the beginnings of this season. I'm like, did that ever come up? Like, was Ben or whatever, or Jen, as we find out later on, were they ever inside Malivore? I don't think they were. They were probably just, like, roaming the earth the entire time. But I was like, in all that time, you never ate a god? Oh, they seem to be somewhat immune to magic, so I'm like, Malivore was created by magic, so would there be some, like, natural immunity on their part, too? Like, would he not be able to eat them even if he had the opportunity? I don't know. My mind just kind of goes into places of like, oh, just like throwing in like, oh, you gotta go higher and higher with every new threat. Like, oh, Malivore's going down. It's like, let's throw gods into the mix. I thought I was about to say that sucks. Like, oh, Vardamus is brought back in the story just for Lizzie to kill him to be her first snack, and then she bounces. But I love that she's also adjusting to her powers. She's like tries to speed in front of Jennifer before she can run away. Well, Jen. And then, like, slams into, like, the door, and she's like, oh, that was embarrassing. And also she's like, oh my god, my fangs. Like, I love that this show can take the opportunity to enjoy that levity. Because, like, obviously, like, Vampire Diaries was very serious. Originals was serious. Like, there was, like, tiny moments of levity between characters, but, like, this show kind of revels in that levity sometimes. And it's like, so it bounces between those serious and jokey tones a lot more than like its predecessors did. So she's able to be like, oh my god, like the fangs, oh my god, this is so cool and whatever. So she goes to try and kill Hope, and it's like, cool, you're defenseless here. You're here, but sure, in this trap that Vardamus put you in, but you're defenseless out there. Ooh, I made more than one. Ooh, I made a hairpin thing out of it. I was like, oh, that's pretty sneaky of you, Liz. To have, like, for Lizzie just to have one, that's interesting. So, but she can't kill Hope, and I was like, what's up with that? I was like, wait. I was like, is this like a... What's going on there? And it's like, oh, because it's like, what vampire blood did you drink? She's like, I don't know what was donated. And it's like, Hope's like, it was my blood. You're like, oh, cool. We're doing this sire bond thing, which do correct me in the comments down below. They haven't done that in, like, have they touched on that at all this series? Because I feel like the sire bond thing hasn't been something they really dabbled with for a while. Like, obviously, the last time I think about the sire bond thing was, like, the originals, like, was that season 3's whole storyline, like, with Aurora and all of them, were basically trying to destroy the sire bonds that connect everybody, because it's like, yeah, you kill an original, everyone in their sire bloodline dies. Because remember that being a whole issue, because like Damon and Stefan found out, oh cool, we're the one original we want dead, Klaus, we're part of his bloodline, we kill him, we're all dead, everyone tied to his bloodline, which I think also included Elena too, because wasn't it I forgot whose blood was in her system when she died. It might either have been Stefan or Damon's, I don't remember. But I mean, like, because obviously, like, that ended up being a whole thing, too, because, like, the Stefan and Elena, I mean, Damon and Elena relationship was kind of a byproduct of, he kind of sired her, so that was kind of like, oh, that's the reason why she's so drawn to him and stuff. I remember those being two prime examples of that, but I can't remember the last time they used the sire bloodline, sire, like, bloodline thing of, like, oh, as a story beat, because I'm like, because I feel like that whole, like, original storyline of, like, oh, let's get, like, sever the bloodline so when the originals are dead, we don't have to worry. I feel like that's the last time that was kind of used. Once again, do correct me in the comments down below and let me know if the show has used it. Like, there's a lot of stuff that slips my mind from time to time. You know, maybe there's stuff that happened in earlier seasons that I'm just not remembering at all, so... There might even be more recent examples of like, oh, Michael, you idiot. They used it in season 3 or they used it, you know, so do let me know. But that is kind of unfortunate that they're bound, like, especially, you know, that hurts Lizzie so much to her core. One, it's like, it's Hope. Her and Hope have always had the contentious relationship they have. Like, if this was Lizzie at the, like, a while, not even just a while back, like, you go back a couple episodes in the grand scheme of the series itself. I'm saying we're going back somewhat in season 3, parts of season 3, Lizzie would be mortified. I mean, she's already mortified, but this is the worst possible outcome. Cool, I am bound to Hope. I can't actually hurt her. I actually have to do whatever she says. Cool. That sucks. But also it's just because it's like, right, she was in a place to forgive Hope. It's, you know, but it got better because they became like sisters, they became besties. But then it was also like, now it's like, cool, not only are you kind of, you hurt my dad, you kill my dad, now you've also, like, killed me, and so it's just, everything just sucks at this moment, you know, so it's just the worst possible outcome, but I guess it's like, right, the most unlikely people pairing up have to pair up, because obviously, like I said, their relationship was better before, but it's just still like, right, they're mortal enemies somewhat now, so they're kind of stuck together. Then there's the whole Jen thing, because it's like, cool, she took the coffin. It's like, well, why did she take it? Because I was like, why even take it then? Like, I wonder, does it have some correlation to Ben? Was she planning on capturing Ben? Because it'd be one of the, because magic won't be able to hold him. And I guess, like, even if you slice him to pieces, eventually he'd be able to piece himself back together, like he has time and time again. But I'm like, it will take a while, but he will eventually regenerate. So I wonder what she was taking the coffin for, that sarcophagus for. Like, what was she going to do with it? Because, like, as a god, like, for it potentially be something that could seal you away, wouldn't it make more sense to destroy it? So why keep it? Why go to Vardamus's class in the first place? Because I guess she was hoping, like, was it just a coincidence? Or was she there specifically because it's like, oh, like, I know, a lot of this, like, godhood stuff. I mean, I need someone who's knowledgeable in all this to maybe point her in the right direction, so maybe that's why she came to Vardamus initially. I had a feeling Jen wasn't just going to be some normal person, that she just happens to find herself smack dab into supernatural stuff. It's like, it's been a while since, like, I think just a normal human got mixed up in all of this. Because typically it's like, you'll have some tangential connection to, like, the supernatural. It's not like, oh, Elena just stumbled. It's like, well, Elena has, well, her mom and dad's circumstances, her biological mom and dad's circumstances. There's also the fact is that she was a doppelganger, so, like, you were kind of screwed from the get-go, you know? So it's kind of like, you were always going to get drawn into the supernatural world in some shape or form. So, like, that's when, like, I can't remember the last time, like, just a regular human that didn't have at least some, like, tangential connection to all of this got dragged into it. Once again, do correct me in the comments down below, being like, oh, you dumb idiot. I guess, like, Mac would technically be, like, you know, before she left, like, would be the most recent one, I guess, with, like, zero tangential, like, straight up connection to the supernatural, I guess. She might be the only one I can think of recently. Tangents and all that aside. Well, I guess arguably you could say, like, Ethan kind of filled that role until he became a supernatural himself, but I always feel like there's just, even the human characters always had some tie to the supernatural. You later on find out that it was almost inevitable you're going to end up here. But now it is a situation where Lizzie and Hope have to work together, because it's like, cool, like, you can't go anywhere without me giving you permission. Cool, we deal with Aurora, then I'll say, you're not allowed to kill me, and I'll send you on my way. And Lizzie's like, am I really supposed to believe you? She's like, if you want me to, I can make you believe it. It's like, don't bother, like, me and my codependency issues, like, it doesn't matter, you know, so. But it is interesting. I wonder how much power could she siphon from a god, because gods are pretty much just straight up magic. So it's like, I wonder how, like, she got something from Jen, but probably not enough. Like, she'd probably be siphoning for a long time if it would even be possible to siphon all of that off a god. But I love that she just, like, took off flying. I'm like, oh, cool, that's awesome. But it's like, yeah, I gotta deal with that, gotta deal with Aurora, plus Hope basically made Lizzie say, like, hey guys, don't come looking for me, I became a vampire, so I need to kind of get my head on straight so I'm not coming back, and having to lie to MG, and it sucks. Because if Hope wasn't so determined on her own part, she probably could have used information, because they're dealing with some godhood stuff that might correlate with the godhood stuff that you're kind of mixed up into, but, you know, Hope didn't think about that, you know, so, I mean, I guess why would you? So, that's kind of interesting. But I think it is fascinating that Hope, even in her non-humanity aspect, is kind of like, cool, because I can acknowledge I've been falling into traps because my humanity has made me extremely reckless. I'm not paying attention. I am kind of very, like, narcissistic and kind of being, like, so full of myself that I'm just like, I don't care about anything. So I have been falling into trap after trap after trap. So she needs someone to kind of watch her blind sides, because I'm in a point I don't care, but I need someone who does care, which I guess is almost befitting, considering, like, you know, Lizzie, she even mentions, like, right, I've always had more heightened emotions than other people anyway. So it's almost beneficial to the person who kind of has no heart to have be sided with the person who kind of has maybe too much heart. I think that's kind of the interesting, once again, parallel there as well. So that unlikely duo is going to be interesting to see the shenanigans and road trip shenanigans that they kind of have to deal with. So that's interesting. I guess arguably in a weird way, it kind of almost feels befitting too, because it reminds me a little bit of it immediately makes me think of some other, like, vampire, like, shenanigan field, like, road trips or something like that. It kind of makes me think of, like, Stefan and Klaus, when Klaus made Stefan turn off his humanity a little bit, that pairing and stuff like that. Also makes me think of Enzo and Damon when they were basically under the Siren's control. It's not a one-for-one, but those words immediately come to my mind. So it just kind of reminds me of that, the pairing and stuff like that. It's going to be interesting to see where things kind of go on that front. Then on the other side of things, I love it's like, cool, like, because everyone else is gone, it's kind of up to the respective leaders. The part of the super squad, kind of, the numbers are dwindling now, so it's only just MG, Jed, and Cleo, and basically they represent each of the factions now, which is almost interesting how that worked out now. But it's like, cool, so we basically have to decide how we're going to handle things going forward, how to deal with the whole Ben thing, considering him being the monster magnet that he is. MG's kind of like, cool, we got to protect everybody from all of this, so he needs to go. Cleo's like, yeah, but maybe help figuring out his circumstances could help us potentially bring everyone, you know, Ethan as well as Caleb back home, as well as other stuff. And now it comes down to Jed, which Jed's is like, no, I don't want to be the deciding factor. But he does come with a very interesting perspective this episode, where he goes like, you know what, maybe we could do both. And so he spends time with Ben and learning more about Ben's story. And I feel so stupid for not immediately like, oh, he brought like, oh, fire, like the magic and stuff. I was like, at first I was like, is that? It's like, no. I was like, oh. I was like, I guess that's not what they're doing. And then it turns out, oh, that's exactly what they're doing. Like, it's like that thing, it's that lore thing of like, yeah, what you think you know is what humans have written down and passed down as like mythology, but it's like, it's the furthest thing from the truth. Like, things have gotten warped. But he's like, yeah, he's essentially Prometheus. It's like, oh yeah, instead of like an eagle coming to eat my liver every day, no, it was monsters. And it's like, interesting. That's interesting. And the sad thing is, like tragedy is what, led him to where he is now. The fact is he begged the gods, his father, to save like his best friend and Asher, like the person he loved, and they wouldn't. So if they weren't going to help me, he's like, I would just go to the realm of the gods and I will steal what I need. But by the time he got back, Ash had died. So he, hoping that the humans would do better than the gods, gave them quote unquote fire. Because it's like, oh, what's the difference? What's the thing that separates gods and humans? It was magic. He's the reason why magic exists in this world. He's also the reason why monsters exist in this world. Because, cool, he gave magic to humans, and humans basically went buck wild, as they do. It's like, oh, you're giving us this power? Oh, that's sick, bro. And they went crazy. Cause I think, is this the furthest we've gone back timeline-wise? I would assume it does. Because I know, like, God, I'm always blanking on his name. Home dude is pretty old. But I think he was like 4,000 years old, wasn't he? Silas, because if I remember correctly, he's like 4,000 years old. So obviously this is the furthest back I think we've gone in the continuity. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but especially if he's saying like, oh yeah, like monsters came about because of all of this. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, they basically ended up making monsters. They basically gave birth to this. He is kind of the forefather of the supernatural world. And it was kind of, that said supernatural world was used as punishment. Like, cool, you regenerate every day while they basically have monsters like rip you apart. So that's jacked up. But I thought it was interesting that out of anyone, it was Jed. Because MG wasn't in like his typical MG move. Because this would totally be what MG would be doing, but he was very like anti-Ben in this episode. And so Jed learns all he can about Ben, kind of learning a little bit more about his curse and everything. I even love Jed being like, yeah, people don't think like it's just for a lack of like, not for a lack of trying or whatever. It's just like, yeah, he did like, I do the reading. So he's like, I am smarter than most people give me credit for. And so Cleo, luckily, in the end, was able to make a bracelet to basically, the frequency of his blood is something that they hear. It's something only the monsters hear, because even someone with heightened hearing, like a wolf like Jed, can't hear it. So it's a very specific frequency only the monsters can hear. So now that they have that, and she's found a way to silence that frequency, monsters won't be coming after him anymore. In fact, the one that come after in this episode is a more docile creature. Because I was like, oh, are they all going to bow down to him like that? It's like, no, that one in particular is a very docile creature. It just gets aggressive when it's activated by a curse. And even Ben now realizes, like, right, I'm not the only one that's cursed. Like, all monsters are basically cursed too, because they're forced to go against, like, they're not doing this because they want to. It's just they're drawn by this uncontrollable part of themselves that like draws them to kill me. So they're just as much victims in this, in just like I am in certain regards. So, and even MG, even though he had given up, even Ben was like, "Yeah, you voted for me to leave, so why do you care now?" He was like, "Old habits are hard to break, you know." And I thought it was sweet where MG was like, "Oh, you're the leader I wish I could be," but for Cleo, it's like, all I had to do all day was think, what would the MG I know and respect do? So it's like, she just has to, like, it's like, give yourself more credit. Like, because he kept trying to be the leader that Hope was saying, like, yeah, until you are willing to do whatever it takes, you'll never be the leader. It's like, yeah, but truth be told is, you don't want to be that type of leader. Doing whatever it takes it's like, yeah, like it gives you motivation and stuff like that, but that can always lead you down a dark path. Things don't always work that way. I mean, Hope's willingness to do whatever it takes kind of like backfired on her. Klaus's need to do whatever it takes to keep his family together backfired on him. So like doing whatever it takes isn't the best like model to kind of follow, you know? I like that Ben didn't initially want to stay here, but Jed's the one that convinced him, because it's like, right, people being cursed, the Salvatore school is the best place for like people who are lost, who are cursed. And part of me is like, oh, are they just gonna make that like a bromance, or is that gonna become something more like Jed and Ben? Because I think when Ben's looking at him, maybe Jed is a little bit more like Ash or something. Like maybe he sees a little bit of Ash in Jed or something. I don't know. I was like, so that's why I'm like, oh, is that just gonna be a bromance, or is that just gonna be like a something more? Man, that'd be interesting either way. But I'm curious. So that's definitely going to be interesting to have a demigod like rolling around. He might actually play some role in. I mean, the timing is interesting. Like he might play some role in making it so that playing some role in Hope's story, and maybe he has some potential role in saving her. Especially considering the fact is that there's a god tying both of their stories together, because him being a demigod, and I wonder who she is, like who she would be, like, because part of me was like, you don't think she's like, I'm trying to think, like flying off like that, I'm like, a person that immediately came to my mind or something was like, you don't think she's like Hermes or something, right? That's what immediately came to my mind. But other people, like people who are more well versed, because also like, what mythology are we pulling from? Because Prometheus, that's Greek, but I'm sure like so much of that overlaps. Because I know in, God, what series am I thinking of? I feel like it might have been the Almighty Johnsons, but maybe it was something else that dealt with gods, where it's like, I guess Supernatural is kind of what I was thinking, because Gabriel the angel pretended to be Loki. He was technically Loki amongst the, like, you know, so it's like, yeah, like people could be like given certain names, but they can kind of fill multiple roles across different, like, mythologies or something like that. Like, oh, you've been like, oh, you're known as Zeus. It's like, well, technically I'm also Odin too. Like, it's something like that, maybe. I'm maybe that's not the best example to use, but I feel like maybe other than the Gabriel example, I feel like there was something else where someone else is like, oh, I'm a god in this like mythology, but I'm also this other god in this other mythology. It's just all the same. I'm curious to see if that's going to end up being the case or not. But like I said, immediately in my head, I think someone flying or whatever. I'm thinking like Hermes or something, but that could totally not be the case at all. But once again, because even he said like, yeah, like the mythologies aren't what you think they are, so they can kind of do whatever they want to with them. So it'll be interesting to find out who Jin really is. Obviously, MG talks about the whole Ethan thing, like. He was so quick this episode because of just everything that was going on. He was just so quick to judge, and so he was kind of wrong about the Ben thing. But luckily, he had Cleo and Jed to kind of balance him out to be on the right side of things. So I think he's going to be able to make up with Ethan, especially now because they have a better idea of what creature Ethan is too. So, and Caleb can come back as well. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things kind of go on that front. But other than that, we've also got the whole situation with our trio in the in limbo, as they got the Sphinx's riddle for the price of every single coin they've collected. So Ted's not too happy about that. So it leads to a back and forth between him and Alaric about like, oh, your plans suck. They never work out. It's like, yeah, what about the whole ruling the world with monsters thing? Oh, that turned out great for you, didn't? So it's like, yeah. But Landon had to be like the more level-headed one. But even Alaric kind of like, man, you're right. Like, the fact is that with everything going on, he's like, this is kind of where I deserve to be, but not you, Landon. But, you know, Landon actually talked about a really interesting perspective on things of him kind of having that perspective as well at one point in time, like him and Raphael. Like, Raphael kind of thought all he was his anger issues. That's all there was to it. But it's like, right, once we unpacked our issues, me and him became brothers. Basically saying that our sins, what we've done in the past, don't define us. He's like, the fact, because he's like, if I was wrong, if Raphael was wrong about himself, like maybe I was wrong about me, because he's like, Raphael was the best dude I know. So the fact is that we're all one like kind of good thing away from being on the right path and the right side of things. So luckily they ended up figuring out the riddle because of Ted, led him to the clock tower. It's kind of a bar in there, and lo and behold, blue in the face. Oh, it's a djinn, which I'm like, cool. That didn't work out so well for Lizzie because, well, the djinn situation is obviously, you know, it's the genie stuff, but it's like, it's not the helpful genie stuff. It's always like a, be careful what you wish for, because you always have to put the asterisks. You always got to read the fine print because things aren't going to go the way you want to. So they don't know about Lizzie's run-in with the djinn. I think, if I remember correctly, because that was a season... Was that a season 1 thing, or was that a season 2 thing? I think, no, that was a season 2? Or was it season 1? I don't remember. Like, she got freed and bounced at the end of it all, but she kind of tricked Lizzie and stuff like that, so that was pretty jacked up. But once again, it just comes with the territory, so it's like... They'd basically, well, luckily they have a trickster like Ted who knows the angle, so he'll be able to help. They literally will have to put their 3 heads together to basically come up with such a soundproof wish that it can't backfire and be like, they need to make sure it's airtight, that there's no wiggle room. Kind of like how it came to like on Stargirl when they were like, okay, we got to make a wish with the right wording and make sure that there's no room for like other things to kind of happen. So I think something of that similar situation is going to happen. So it's going to be so fascinating to see where these storylines go and how they eventually like fully tie back into each other. Cause like now they're kind of like, they're connected, but it's like, they're kind of all like 3 different storylines off in their own lanes, but eventually it's all going to circle back and tie back together. It's just going to be interesting to see how. So, but I'm excited to have Legacies back. I'm excited to see where the rest of the season ends up taking us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.